All right, I have a sample tiller sheet here, and I'm going to walk you through the tiller transaction spotlight, how to set it up, and how to use it. First thing I would recommend is right-click, duplicate your transaction sheet. So you make a backup copy just in case anything goes haywire. You're going to, at the top of your transaction sheet, create 11 extra rows. So you're going to insert 11 rows above, and then I'm gonna shade these. I like to for some aesthetics. I like to shade these. I'm gonna pick purple because it makes me feel more relaxed, and I'm gonna make a two-tone color here so that I can um, differentiate row 2, which is going to be a header row, and it's going to have a search term. You'll see that in a moment. So in A2, we're going to create a drop down. Now there's a template where you could copy all these things in. You can get the formulas from the write-up, but I'm just going to walk you through how you would create it from scratch here. So in A2, we're going to go to data, data validation. We're going to click add rule, and we're going to create a drop down with off, as well as a few number choices. You'll understand these a little better in a moment, and you can customize these in the future to exactly what works for you. So I'm going to set it to off. The next thing we're going to do, I do like to make this color of this row white just to make it stand out as well. We're going to go to the description column, and in row 2, we're going to place the first of the 2 large formulas that we have. This formula looks a little intimidating, but don't worry about it. Everything should work. And you basically just need to make sure that when this formula bar, which can be expanded to look at the rest, when it's a height of 1, when it's minimized completely, that you can see all of the variables up through the search override. The start row is the row of starting data. The stop row is where the search would end. I leave it open so it goes the whole way to the bottom. Previously, I thought that there may be some performance improvement with that, but what I found in my case was that the performance was really dependent on solely on the number of rows, so the sheer size of the spreadsheet. The flag character is by default a T. You can change it to whatever you want. And then the column where you're going to place that flag is by default column 1, but you can put it in another column if you need to. And then A2 override, we're going to talk about these numbers in a moment. That's for you to override those numbers. And finally, the search override is for you to put in any search term that you want, regardless of what's in the box, it will override. When you turn it on, it immediately picks up the first uncategorized transaction. So if you have anything uncategorized, it's going to pick it up. If I categorize that, it's going to pick up the next one. The other way is, again, to use that flag character. You can then just place the T yourself, and that will override any uncategorized, and it will take the one that you flagged. If you do more than one, it's only going to pick up the one that's at the top. So that's how that works. Now the numbers here drive the length of the search term. So a shorter search term will pick up more results. A longer one will get more specific and hone in on exactly what you're looking for. If you want to change that, you can just jump straight to the editing that way. Or once again, we had that override, the A2 override that you could type in if you want something very specific. For instance, 3 characters, you could do that. So we're going to clear that, and now it's time to put in the workhorse of the solution here, and that is the formula that goes in A3. I'm going to copy that over, put it in. So the number of results is the 10, obviously, in the window here. If you make it more or less, you can modify that. The end row was, again, if you have a super long spreadsheet and you only want to search through the first 500, you could change that number there. Last column G is important. So here you can see this determines how much of the data is returned in this window. So up through column G by default, you could change that to H and see how that returns the next column. The important thing here is that many people, including myself, have inserted into the transaction sheet the type and group columns, and maybe you've made some of your own. And what these do is they fill down from row 1 to the bottom with a formula at the top, an array type formula. And this causes a problem because it can collide with the results here, and you'll get a circular dependency error if you try to return data in this function that collides with those columns. So I would recommend keeping those columns and this data separate. Otherwise, you're going to have this circular dependency. It's going to cause you headaches and you're going to hate this solution, and we want to avoid that. The GID is important in order to get the hyperlink correct. So here you see it says invalid range when I want to use my hyperlink. That's because I don't have the correct GID. So you can come here. The GID will be found in the hyperlink of your Google Sheet at the top in the URL. The end of the URL will say GID equals. You'll put in yours, and then your link should become valid. These are really useful for stuff that's out of view. So like this row 110, I can click on it, come down here, make some changes. This one's uncategorized. I could fix that, and then I can come back to the top. And lastly, the date format just determines how this date's going to look. So the premise here is that dates get converted to these strings with leading underscores. This is the key to the whole thing, to being able to maintain this while having the tiller feed be unaffected. So I have mine set up with the tiller feed being automatic overnight, and I have this running and I've had no issues with it. And this is because the tiller feed, as one of its last steps, it will sort by dates descending. And with these leading underscores, these will always stay at the top. So the other thing we need to do is add to the header row a very specific date far off in the future so that the header row will stay where it needs to stay. And you can see that any empty rows are filled with these zeros. I've found that this has no impact on reports as well, because most reports will search for valid dates, and these don't get picked up as valid dates, so they don't get pulled into the reports. I've checked for things like counts of transactions. It doesn't seem to impact those either. So I can't guarantee that 100% of the tiller universe and community templates are unaffected by this, but in my experience, there's been no impact. And you can turn this off. When you turn it off, you'll see that it's all zeros here. And what you can do, what I do, is in that column, in those cells, B3 to B12, I create a conditional formatting rule that takes that exact value and it blends it into the background by changing the text. We don't need a fill, but we change the text to match the background color. Okay, and then the last formatting thing that looks kind of nice is I freeze to row 12 and I group these so they can be collapsed. So then you have a view like this when it's off. If you want to use it, you open it up, turn it back on, and you have this example. The last thing I want to show you is that for the amount field, for instance, this is a nice opportunity in that header row 2 to put some summary statistics. So in the default template and in the write-up, I've mentioned an averaging function there. So you can have an averaging function. You could come up with some other creative ideas for things to put in column or in row 2. So that's basically it. That's the tiller sheet spotlight. I hope you find it useful. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me, and thank you very much.